careers and began to work in the area of the paranormal and extraterrestrial and its relationship to public policy, which is my background because I'm an international lawyer. So
Yeah.
by the middle of 1973, I had written my first book in the area, which was published in North America and Japan, and which set out, amongst other things, the context communication theory of extraterrestrial communication, holding that communications by higher intelligent civilizations or by other intelligent civilizations was actually in symbolic form, much as the nature of a dream, and that we could interpret UFO encounters, for example, from a symbolic area, because the intelligence behind the UFO encounters was trying to communicate to us in a symbolic fashion.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so by 1977, I was a futurist at Stanford Research Institute and was pursuing an extraterrestrial communication study with the White House of President Jimmy Carter.
Really?
Carter had promised to open the UFO and extraterrestrial files if he was elected president in the 1976 campaign. So when he won, I approached the Carter White House, and they approved the design of an extraterrestrial communication study, which would have been the first civilian extraterrestrial communication study in the U.S. All of the studies up to that point had been dominated by the military and intelligence areas. So very soon after that study got started, the Department of Defense contacted Stanford Research Institute and indicated that if the study was not stopped, they would terminate all funding to Stanford Research Institute.
Huh, really?
Which then constituted about 25% of its $100 million budget.
Oops.
So that the study was terminated, and that constituted my first personal and quite practical introduction to exopolitics. So to fast forward to the years 1998 and 1999, I felt as though in many of the UFO studies and other studies, there was missing a systematic kind of field theory and study of how the universe functions in terms of intelligent societies. How prevalent are they? How are they organized? What are their goals? How do they interact with Earth? And that gave birth to Exopolitics, which I wrote in 1999 and then published in the year 2000. And then following that, throughout the decade from 1999 to 2009, there has been an acceleration of disclosures by governments about their secret UFO and extraterrestrial related files. For example, around 2002 to 2003 and 4, first Mexico, then Brazil, then Chile, Peru,
Mhm.
then in 2007 France and the UK governments began to release their extraterrestrial uh, secret files, and then in 2008 this continued, and in 2009 we've had um, uh, Sweden
That's right.
and Finland have released their secret files, and also in this time since the publication of Exopolitics in 2001, we had many high-level governmental officials, former governmental officials, and pilots, etc., come forward in the Disclosure Project, and also in other similar press conferences later, and high officials like former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, Paul Hellyer, who in 2005 came forward and said that the U.S. was trying to foment an interstellar war with ethical ET societies. So I feel that the whole concept of exopolitics has been like a concept that has gone into the collective mind, which has facilitated the acceleration of societal contact between our civilization and other civilizations, and that this will continue to accelerate during the coming decade as well, at an exponential rate.
Very, very interesting. And there's obviously many things I want to try to touch upon in regards to what you just said. But I think that we should, at this point, try to dive into the L-Cross mission, NASA's bombing of the moon in October, and maybe from there springboard into some of these other areas as well. But just to recap quickly here again for people who haven't heard about this, NASA's L-Cross mission, they launched a lunar orbiter on June 19th this year, and is intended to bomb a location on the south pole of the moon on October 9th this year with a two-ton kinetic weapon, or two-ton kinetic weapons, creating a crater on the moon nearly 5 miles wide. And what you've said here also, Alfred, is that this bombing violates then space law, including the UN Outer Space Treaty and the Moon Treaty, and may actually trigger conflict with extraterrestrial civilizations based on the moon, which the U.S. government, NASA, have known about since the mid-1960s. And I guess that you also advocate, obviously, then the L-Cross bombing should be aborted before October 9th. But tell us a little bit about that. That's loaded. First of all, so to suggest that there is ET activity on the moon, but then that the human agencies here are going to go up and bomb this. What do you think is behind this, Alfred?
Well, first of all, before we even get to the question of possible ET presence on the moon, the L-Cross mission in itself, because it has an environmental impact on the moon, is a violation of international law and of space law. So even if we don't talk about extraterrestrials at all, the issue of sending a 2-ton kinetic weapon in a purported scientific experiment to look for water is a violation of the terms of the treaties that you mentioned, the Outer Space Treaty and the Moon Treaty.
Yeah.
I've spoken to scientists, and what they state is that this is a very puzzling and strange experimental design, because if they're looking for water, what should have been designed is a lunar rover, and such as the Mars rovers, which would go in and test for water on the moon in ways that would have less of an impact on the lunar environment. And very, very briefly, and this is without talking about